Hello and welcome back to the Sleepy Darwin. Whether you're curled up in bed, questioning who you really are, settling into a quiet evening of wonder, or simply letting your mind drift through the mysteries of existence, you've found exactly the right place. Tonight, we're embarking on a gentle journey through the most remarkable truth about being human, that the person listening to these words right now will never exist again in quite the same way. From the cellular renovation happening in your body, as we speak to the quantum uncertainty dancing in your very atoms, this is the story of your beautiful, constant becoming. Now, before we begin, if these sleepy explorations bring you comfort, a like and subscribe would mean the world to me and to the ever-changing constellation of consciousness that is you. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight and what time it is in your corner of the world. Are you drifting off in a bustling city or finding stillness in a quiet countryside? As always, I hope this isn't so fascinating that it keeps you wide awake, contemplating your own transformation. But if it does, at least you'll rest a little wiser about the magnificent mystery of being human. So breathe deep, let your shoulders soften, and let's explore why you'll never be the same person twice. Let me tell you a story that you've probably heard before, whispered in biology classrooms, and shared at dinner parties like a comfortable old sweater of scientific wisdom. The story goes like this. Every 7 years, every single cell in your body is replaced, making you literally a completely new person. It's a beautiful thought, isn't it? That you could shed your entire physical self like a snake sheds its skin, emerging renewed and fresh. But here's where science becomes even more wonderful than myth, because the truth is far more intricate, far more magical than this simple 7-year cycle. The reality is that your body is not operating on some cosmic timer, replacing everything at once like a factory recall. Instead, you are living within what I like to call the great cellular turnover, a symphony of renewal where different parts of you dance to entirely different rhythms of rebirth. Imagine, if you will, that your body is like a grand old theatre, constantly renovating itself while the show goes on. Some rooms are being completely rebuilt every few days, while others remain mostly unchanged for decades. The ushers, your blood cells, are constantly being replaced, but the grand architecture, your neurons and heart muscle, remains largely the same throughout your lifetime, with only careful restoration and repair. Let's start our journey in perhaps the most industrious renovation site in your entire body, your stomach. Right now, as you listen to these words, your stomach lining is engaged in what can only be described as a week-long renovation project that never ends. The cells that line your stomach face a hostile environment, bathing in acid strong enough to dissolve metal, constantly churning and grinding against the food you eat. These brave little cellular workers have one of the shortest lifespans in your entire body, lasting only about 3 to 5 days before they're replaced entirely. Think about that for a moment. In the time it takes you to plan your week, decide what to have for dinner a few nights from now, or finish a good book, your stomach has completely redecorated itself. The stomach you woke up with this Monday morning will be almost entirely different from the one you'll have next Monday. It's like having a renovation crew that works so efficiently, so quietly, that you never notice the construction, even though they're completely rebuilding your digestive command center twice a week. Moving upward from your stomach, let's visit your skin, that remarkable boundary between you and the world, your body's largest organ, and perhaps its most visible example of constant renewal. Your skin is shedding and regenerating like gentle snow falling in reverse, constantly creating new layers while letting the old ones drift away. Every minute of every day, you're shedding about 30,000 to 40,000 dead skin cells. That's nearly 9 pounds of dead skin every year. Imagine that weight in your hands, the physical evidence of your body's constant renovation. Your outer layer of skin, the epidermis, completely renews itself approximately every 28 days, though this slows as we age. Picture this renewal like watching time-lapse photography of a forest through the seasons, the surface constantly changing while the deeper structures remain stable. The skin cells are born in the deeper layers, then slowly journey upward over weeks, gradually flattening and hardening like leaves changing color in autumn, until they finally reach the surface and are gently brushed away by your clothes, your towel after a shower, or simply by the act of existing in the world. But here's something beautiful to consider, as you perhaps run your fingers along your arm. The skin you're touching right now has been on quite a journey. Those surface cells began their lives deep below, in the basal layer, about a month ago. They've been slowly migrating upward, transforming themselves, preparing for their brief moment at the surface of you before they return to dust. Your skin is not just protecting you, it's telling the story of the past month of your life, cell by cell. Now, let's travel through your circulatory highways, where some of the most well-traveled citizens of your body are constantly moving. Your red blood cells are like tiny, specialized delivery vehicles, each one carrying precious cargo of oxygen from your lungs to every corner of your being. These remarkable cells live for about 120 days, roughly 4 months before they're recycled in your spleen and replaced by fresh ones born in your bone marrow. 4 months might not seem like much, but consider the journey each red blood cell takes in that lifetime. If you could follow one red blood cell through its 120-day adventure, you'd witness an epic odyssey. This single cell will complete its circuit through your entire circulatory system, from heart to lungs to tissues, and back approximately once every minute. In its 4-month lifetime, one red blood cell will travel about 300 miles through your blood vessels. That's like walking from New York City to Boston, except this microscopic traveler makes the journey through the winding highways of your arteries and veins, carrying life-sustaining oxygen to every part of you. Your white blood cells, the guardians of your immune system, have even more varied lifespans. Some live only for days, others for months, and a special few, your memory cells, can live for decades, carrying within them the cellular memory of every illness you've conquered, every vaccine you've received, like a biological library of your body's battles and victories. Moving deeper into your body's architecture, we encounter some of the slowest dancers in this renewal ballet. Your bone cells. Bones might seem like permanent structures, like the steel girders of a skyscraper, but they're actually in constant, slow-motion renovation. Your bones completely renew themselves, but they take their time, about it approximately 10 years for your entire skeleton to be rebuilt, though this varies significantly between different bones and changes as you age. The process is called bone remodeling, and it's happening right now in your body through the careful work of 2 types of cells: osteoclasts, which break down old bone tissue, and osteoblasts, which build new bone in its place. It's like having a construction crew that works in perfect coordination, the demolition team and the construction team working together to maintain the structural integrity of your body's framework while constantly updating, strengthening it. Your hip bones and spine, which bear so much of your body's weight, remodel more quickly than your skull bones, which face less daily stress. The ribs that protect your heart and lungs renovate at their own pace, different from the long bones of your arms and legs. Each bone in your body is on its own timeline of renewal, responding to the forces and stresses of your particular life, your particular way of moving through the world. And then we come to perhaps the most fascinating example of cellular renewal and persistence: your heart muscle. For most of your life, your heart maintains largely the same population of muscle cells, but this doesn't mean it remains unchanged. Recent research has revealed that your heart does create new muscle cells, though very slowly, about 1% per year when you're young, declining to about 0.45% per year by the time you're 75. This means that if you live to be 50, about 55% of your heart muscle cells will be the ones you were born with, while 45% will be new arrivals. Your heart is both ancient and ever-renewing, a muscular poet that beats out the rhythm of your life while slowly, quietly, writing new verses of itself. The heart you have today is not quite the same heart you had a year ago, and yet it carries within it cells that have been with you since your very first breath. But even those long-lived heart cells don't remain static. They're constantly repairing themselves, replacing worn-out components, refreshing their internal machinery. The mitochondria within each cell, those cellular powerhouses that fuel your heart's relentless beating, are themselves replaced every few weeks. So while the heart muscle cell remains, its internal universe is constantly renewed, like a ship whose parts are gradually replaced while it continues sailing. Let's rest here for a moment and consider this gentle miracle happening within you right now. As you breathe in, breathe out, feel your heart beating steadily in your chest. Recognize that you are witnessing one of the most extraordinary processes in the known universe: the constant, careful, beautiful renovation of life itself. Your body is not a museum of fixed exhibits, but a living gallery where the artwork is constantly being restored, repainted, and renewed. Some pieces change daily, others take years, but nothing remains exactly as it was. You are simultaneously ancient and brand new, carrying within you cells that are days old, alongside cells that have been your companions for decades. Take a moment to feel your skin, that boundary between you and the world, knowing that its surface is younger than your last vacation. Place your hand on your chest and feel your heart, knowing that it carries within it both the cells of your birth and the cells of your recent growth. You are a living testament to the universe's creativity, to life's endless capacity for renewal and persistence. This is the first movement in the symphony of your constant becoming, the physical renovation that never ceases, never rests, never stops composing new variations on the theme of you. Now, let's journey even deeper into the mystery of your changing self, down to the very atoms that compose your being. Because if the story of cellular renewal is remarkable, the story of atomic turnover is nothing short of miraculous, a cosmic dance of matter that connects you to the birth of stars and the death of ancient worlds. Every atom in your body was once part of something else. Every single one. The carbon atoms that form the backbone of your DNA, the calcium atoms that strengthen your bones, the iron atoms that carry oxygen in your blood. None of these began their existence within you. They are ancient travelers, cosmic wanderers who have found their way into the temporary arrangement that you call yourself. Consider the carbon atoms that right now are part of your muscles, your organs, your very thoughts, because yes, thoughts have a physical basis in carbon-containing molecules. Some of these carbon atoms were once part of ancient plants that lived hundreds of millions of years ago, locked away in coal deposits until humans dug them up and burned them, releasing their carbon back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide was then absorbed by a tree, maybe in a forest you've never seen, incorporated into the wood of a branch, the veins of a leaf. When that tree died and decomposed, or when you ate a fruit from that tree, those carbon atoms found their way into your body. They became part of you through the simple act of breathing, eating, living. The carbon atom that's currently part of a protein in your muscle cell might have previously been part of a dinosaur's bone, a fern in a primordial forest, a grain of wheat in an ancient field, or carbon dioxide in the breath of someone who lived centuries before you were born. This is the cosmic recycling program that makes us all temporary collections of universal matter, borrowed arrangements of elements that have been cycling through the universe for billions of years. You are not just made of star stuff. As Carl Sagan so beautifully said, you are star stuff, temporarily organized into the pattern of your particular consciousness, your particular way of being. The calcium atoms in your bones right now were forged in the heart of a dying star, in those final moments when a massive sun ran out of fuel and collapsed in on itself, then exploded outward in a supernova, scattering its newly created elements across the cosmos. Those calcium atoms drifted through space for eons, eventually becoming part of the nebula that would collapse to form our solar system, then part of the Earth, then part of the food chain that eventually led to the glass of milk you drank as a child, or the leafy greens you had for lunch last week. You are wearing atoms that once danced in dinosaur bones, that once sparkled in primordial seas, that once formed the shells of creatures in oceans so ancient that the continents themselves were arranged differently. The oxygen atoms you're breathing right now might have been breathed by Shakespeare, by dinosaurs, by the first fish that decided to crawl out of the ocean onto land. Every breath connects you to every other breathing thing that has ever lived. But here's where the story becomes even more wonderful. These atoms don't stay with you forever. You are not a permanent repository of matter, but a temporary pattern through which the universe flows. The atoms that make up your body are constantly being exchanged with the environment around you. You breathe in oxygen and nitrogen. You exhale carbon dioxide. You eat food and incorporate its atoms into your tissues, and you excrete waste that returns atoms to the world. You drink water, and the hydrogen and oxygen become part of you, and you perspire and release them back to the atmosphere. Scientists have calculated that about 98% of the atoms in your body are replaced every year. Every year. This means that the atoms that composed your body last year are almost entirely different from the atoms that compose your body today. You are like a whirlpool in a stream, a persistent pattern in the flow of matter, maintaining your shape and identity while the actual substance constantly changes. Think about the hydrogen atoms in your body. They make up about 10% of your mass, primarily as part of water molecules. Some of these hydrogen atoms are among the oldest things in the universe, formed just minutes after the Big Bang itself. 13.8 billion years ago. These atoms have been cycling through the cosmos for almost the entire history of the universe. They have been part of primordial gas clouds, ancient stars, comets, oceans, plants, animals, and countless other humans before finding their temporary home in you. Right now, as you listen to these words, you are carrying within your body hydrogen atoms that witnessed the birth of the first stars that were present when galaxies began to form, that have traveled unimaginable distances across space and time to become, for this brief moment, part of your thoughts, your dreams, your consciousness. The nitrogen in your DNA and proteins came from the nuclear furnaces of ancient stars, fused from lighter elements in the intense heat and pressure of stellar cores. When those stars died, they released this nitrogen into space, where it eventually became part of the molecular clouds from which new stars and planets formed. That nitrogen traveled through space for billions of years before becoming part of the Earth's atmosphere, then part of bacteria that could capture it from the air, then part of plants, then animals, and finally part of you. Even the water in your body tells an ancient story. Water molecules are constantly cycling through your system. You take in about 2.5 liters per day and eliminate roughly the same amount. But the individual hydrogen and oxygen atoms that make up that water have been cycling through the Earth's systems for billions of years. The water you drank this morning might contain atoms that were once part of ancient oceans, that fell as rain on forests that existed millions of years before humans evolved, that were once locked in glaciers or deep underground aquifers. There's something almost mystical about realizing that you are not separate from the natural world, but an integral part of its constant cycling and recycling. The boundary between you and not you becomes beautifully blurred when you understand that your atoms are constantly coming and going, that you are simultaneously brand new and unimaginably ancient. This atomic carousel never stops spinning. Right now, as you breathe, carbon atoms are leaving your body with each exhalation, and new atoms are entering with each breath. As you digest food, break down old tissues, and build new ones, you are participating in the grand cosmic exchange that has been happening since the first complex molecules formed in the early Earth's oceans. The iron atoms in your blood, those essential components of hemoglobin that carry oxygen from your lungs to every cell in your body, were forged in the cores of massive stars and scattered through the universe when those stars exploded. These iron atoms have been cycling through the Earth's systems for billions of years, sometimes locked in rocks, sometimes dissolved in oceans, sometimes part of ancient bacteria, sometimes part of the plants and animals that became the food that eventually led to their incorporation into your bloodstream. What this means is that you are not just connected to all life on Earth, you are connected to the entire universe, part of an unbroken chain of matter and energy that stretches back to the very beginning of time. You are the universe experiencing itself, temporarily, through the particular arrangement of atoms that happens to be you right now. And yet, despite this constant atomic turnover, you remain you. Your memories persist, your personality endures, your sense of self continues, even as the very atoms that compose your brain are gradually replaced. This is one of the deepest mysteries of consciousness and identity, how the pattern of self can persist even as the substrate is constantly changing. If the constant turnover of atoms and cells throughout your body is remarkable, what's happening in your brain is nothing short of extraordinary. For most of human history, scientists believed that the brain you were born with was essentially the brain you'd die with. That neurons, unlike other cells, couldn't regenerate, couldn't adapt, couldn't fundamentally change. But that old understanding has been beautifully, dramatically overturned. Your brain is not a fixed computer running the same software forever. It's more like a living city that's constantly renovating itself, rebuilding its streets, constructing new neighborhoods, and finding innovative ways to connect different districts. This capacity for change is called neuroplasticity, and it might be the most hopeful, most transformative concept in all of neuroscience. Neuroplasticity is your brain's way of staying young, no matter how old you are. It's the reason why you can learn new skills at any age, why your personality can continue to evolve throughout your lifetime, why recovery is possible after brain injury, and why every new experience literally changes who you are at the most fundamental level. Let's start with one of the most revolutionary discoveries in neuroscience: the fact that your brain creates new neurons throughout your entire life. For decades, scientists believed that neurogenesis, the birth of new brain cells stopped in early childhood. But we now know that new neurons are born daily in at least two areas of your adult brain: the hippocampus, which is crucial for learning and memory, and the olfactory bulb, which processes smells. In your hippocampus alone, about 700 new neurons are born every day. That might not sound like much in a brain that contains roughly 86 billion neurons, but these new cells play a crucial role in your ability to form new memories, learn new information, and adapt to new situations. These baby neurons are like fresh students arriving at a university. They're especially good at forming new connections and integrating new information. What's even more remarkable is that you have some control over this process of neurogenesis. Exercise, learning, and certain types of experiences can increase the birth rate of new neurons, while chronic stress, depression, and isolation can decrease it. When you learn a new language, practice a musical instrument, engage in regular physical exercise, or even just explore new environments, you're literally encouraging your brain to grow new cells. But neurogenesis is just one part of your brain's renovation project. Even more dramatic is the constant rewiring of connections between neurons. Your brain contains trillions of synapses, the connection points between neurons where information is passed from one cell to another. These synapses are constantly being strengthened, weakened, created, and eliminated based on your experiences, thoughts, and behaviors. Think of your brain's synapses like the streets in a growing city. The routes you use most frequently become highways stronger, faster, more efficient. The neural pathways you rarely use become like back alleys, gradually weakening and sometimes disappearing entirely. But new connections are always being formed, new routes always being explored, like a city that's constantly updating its infrastructure to meet the changing needs of its inhabitants. Every time you learn something new, you're literally building new neural pathways. When you first started learning to read, or drive a car, or use a smartphone, your brain had to construct entirely new networks of connections to handle these tasks. At first, these new pathways were like dirt roads, slow, requiring conscious effort and attention. But with practice, they became superhighways of automatic response. Right now, as you listen to these words and comprehend their meaning, thousands of neurons are firing in coordinated patterns, activating networks that were built through years of language learning, cultural context, and personal experience. The very act of understanding this sentence is strengthening some neural connections and potentially creating new ones. Your hippocampus, that seahorse-shaped structure deep in your brain, deserves special attention in this story of neural renovation. It's your brain's memory maker, constantly encoding new experiences and helping to transfer important information into long-term storage. But it's also one of the most plastic regions of your brain, constantly growing new neurons and rewiring its connections. The hippocampus is particularly sensitive to your lifestyle choices. London taxi drivers, who must memorize the complex layout of the city's streets, show enlarged posterior hippocampi compared to the general population. Musicians who started training in childhood show structural differences in areas of the brain associated with motor control, auditory processing, and spatial coordination. These aren't just temporary changes, they're permanent renovations to the brain's architecture. But perhaps most beautifully, your brain's renovation project happens not just when you're awake and actively learning, but also when you're sleeping. Sleep is like your brain's cleaning crew, working the night shift to clear away metabolic waste, consolidate memories, and prepare for the next day's experiences. During sleep, your brain cells actually shrink, creating more space between them and allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow through and wash away toxic proteins that accumulate during waking hours. It's like your brain takes a bath every night, clearing away the cellular debris of the day's thinking and preparing for tomorrow's cognitive work. Sleep also plays a crucial role in memory consolidation, the process by which temporary memories become permanent ones. During deep sleep, your brain replays the day's experiences, strengthening important memories and letting less important ones fade away. The neural connections that were formed during the day are reinforced, while others are pruned away. You literally wake up with a slightly different brain than the one you went to sleep with. REM sleep, when most vivid dreaming occurs, seems to be particularly important for creative thinking and problem solving. During REM sleep, your brain makes novel connections between previously unrelated concepts, which might explain why solutions to problems sometimes come to us in dreams. or why we wake up with fresh perspectives on challenging situations. But your brain's plasticity isn't limited to childhood or even to normal aging. Even after injury, the brain shows remarkable capacity for reorganization and recovery. Stroke patients can sometimes regain lost functions as other areas of the brain take over the roles of damaged regions. People who lose their sight often develop enhanced hearing abilities as their brains reallocate neural resources. The brain's ability to adapt, compensate, and rewire itself continues throughout life. Meditation and mindfulness practices provide particularly striking examples of how conscious practices can reshape the brain. Regular meditators show increased gray matter density in areas associated with attention, emotional regulation, and self-awareness. They also show decreased activity in the default mode network, the brain regions that are active when we're not focused on specific tasks, and that are associated with self-referential thinking and mind-wandering. Even short-term meditation training can produce measurable changes in brain structure and function. 8 weeks of mindfulness training can increase cortical thickness in areas associated with attention and sensory processing, and decrease activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system that responds to stress and threat. Learning a new language literally rewires your brain, creating new neural networks and strengthening connections between different brain regions. Bilingual individuals show enhanced cognitive flexibility, better attention control, and even delayed onset of dementia symptoms. The act of switching between languages exercises the brain's executive control networks, keeping them strong and flexible. Physical exercise might be one of the most powerful ways to promote brain plasticity. Aerobic exercise increases the production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that promotes the growth and survival of neurons. Exercise also increases blood flow to the brain, delivers oxygen and nutrients to neural tissue, and stimulates the birth of new neurons in the hippocampus. Your body is not a fixed castle, but a flowing river of renewal. From the cellular level to the atomic level to the neural level, you are constantly becoming someone new. The stomach that digests your food renews itself weekly, the skin that protects you replaces itself monthly, the atoms that compose you cycle through the universe on timescales both cosmic and intimate. And yet, through all this change, something persists. Some pattern, some essence, some continuous thread of identity that remains recognizably you even as everything about you transforms. You are simultaneously the same person you were yesterday and someone entirely new. You are both permanent and temporary, both ancient and freshly born, both individual and indivisibly connected to everything else in the universe. This is the beautiful paradox of being human. We are patterns of change that somehow maintain continuity, rivers that keep their shape while their water flows constantly onward, songs that remain recognizable even as new notes are always being played. In the next movement of our exploration, we'll delve into how this physical renovation extends into the realm of mind and memory, where the story of your constant becoming becomes even more mysterious and wonderful. Close your eyes for a moment, or simply let them soften their focus and think back to a birthday from your childhood. Perhaps you're 7 or 8 years old, standing in front of a cake with flickering candles, surrounded by faces you loved. Can you see it? The colors of the decorations, the expressions on faces, maybe even the taste of frosting on your tongue. Now, here's something beautiful and slightly unsettling to consider. That memory you just recalled isn't quite what you think it is. It's not a photograph stored perfectly in the archives of your mind, waiting to be retrieved unchanged whenever you need it. Instead, it's something far more mysterious and wonderful. It's a painting that changes each time you view it, a story that gets rewritten with every telling, a living thing that evolves along with you. This is perhaps one of the most profound ways you're constantly becoming someone new. Your memories, those building blocks of identity and selfhood, are not fixed records of your past, but dynamic reconstructions that shift and change with each remembering. You are not the keeper of an unchanging historical record, but the author of an ever-evolving autobiography that gets edited each time you open it. Memory, you see, is not like a video camera that records events and plays them back with perfect fidelity. It's more like a skilled artist who creates a new painting each time, using the same basic elements, but influenced by current mood, recent experiences, and the passage of time. Each time you remember something, your brain doesn't simply retrieve a file, it reconstructs the memory from fragments, filling in gaps, adjusting details, and coloring the entire experience with your present emotional state. This process begins the moment an experience becomes a memory. When something happens to you, your brain doesn't store it as a single, complete unit. Instead, different aspects of the experience get distributed across different regions of your brain. The visual details might be stored in your visual cortex, the emotional significance in your amygdala, the sequence of events in your hippocampus, the sounds in your auditory cortex. When you later recall the memory, your brain has to gather all these scattered pieces and weave them back together into a coherent narrative. But here's where it gets fascinating. This reconstruction process is influenced by everything that's happened to you since the original event occurred. Your current mood colors the emotional tone of the memory. Your recent experiences provide context that can alter details. Your current relationships can change how you remember past relationships. Knowledge you've gained since the event can retroactively modify how you understand what happened. Think about that childhood birthday memory again. If you remember feeling happy and loved, that emotional coloring might be influenced by how you're feeling about your family relationships right now. If you've recently had a falling out with a sibling, you might unconsciously edit them out of the memory or remember their expression as less joyful than it actually was. If you've been feeling nostalgic lately, you might remember the day as more magical, more golden than it seemed at the time. This isn't your brain playing tricks on you, it's your brain doing exactly what it evolved to do. Memory isn't designed to be a perfect historical record. It's designed to help you navigate future situations based on past experiences. Your brain is constantly updating your memories to make them more relevant to your current life, more useful for the person you are now rather than the person you were then. Scientists have demonstrated this memory malleability in countless studies. In one famous experiment, researchers showed participants footage of a car accident and then asked them questions about what they saw. When they asked how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other, participants estimated higher speeds than when they asked how fast were the cars going when they contacted each other. That single word, smashed versus contacted, actually changed how people remembered the same event. Even more remarkably, participants who heard the word smashed were more likely to report seeing broken glass in the footage a week later, even though there was no broken glass in the original video. Their memory had been reconstructed to include details that fit with the more dramatic interpretation suggested by the language used in the question. This happens in your own life constantly, usually without your awareness. Each time you tell a story about something that happened to you, you're not just recounting a memory, you're reconstructing it, and that reconstruction becomes the new version stored in your brain. The memory of telling the story begins to merge with the memory of the original event. Details get emphasized or minimized based on your audience's reactions. Elements that make for a better story get embellished, while boring or irrelevant details fade away. Your childhood memories are particularly susceptible to this reconstructive process because they've been recalled and reconstructed so many times over the years. That birthday party you remember might be a composite of several different birthday parties, combined with photographs you've seen, stories family members have told, and your adult understanding of what birthday parties are supposed to be like. This doesn't mean your memories are false or that your past didn't happen. It means your relationship with your past is far more dynamic and creative than you might have imagined. You are not just remembering your life, you are continually reauthoring it, creating a narrative of selfhood that evolves along with your understanding of who you are and who you want to become. False memories, memories of things that never happened, can feel completely, convincingly real. In laboratory settings, researchers have successfully implanted false memories of childhood events that never occurred. Participants in these studies don't just intellectually accept that the false event happened, they develop rich, detailed, emotional memories of experiences that existed only in the experimenter's suggestion. This happens because the process of remembering false events is neurologically identical to the process of remembering real ones. Your brain uses the same reconstruction process for both weaving together fragments of real experiences, emotions, and knowledge to create a coherent narrative. The false memory of being lost in a shopping mall as a child might combine your real experience of shopping malls, your real emotions of fear and confusion from other situations, and your knowledge of what it would feel like to be lost. But perhaps most beautifully, the emotional coloring of your memories shifts constantly with your current state. The same event can feel completely different when remembered during different periods of your life. A relationship that ended badly might be remembered primarily with hurt and anger when you're feeling lonely, but with gratitude and fondness when you're happy in a new relationship. A challenging period in your life might be remembered with pride and accomplishment when you're feeling confident, but with anxiety and regret when you're struggling. This emotional shifting isn't just a surface phenomenon, it actually changes the neurological structure of the memory itself. Each time you recall a memory, while in a particular emotional state, you're strengthening the neural connections between the memory and that emotion. Over time, these emotional associations can become so strong that they seem like inherent parts of the original experience, even when they weren't present at the time. Your memory is also highly selective, constantly editing and curating your past to create a coherent sense of self. You're more likely to remember events that fit with your current self-concept and forget or modify events that don't. If you see yourself as a kind person, you'll more easily remember times when you were generous and helpful, while times when you were selfish or cruel might fade or be reinterpreted in ways that preserve your positive self-image. This selective editing extends to your entire life narrative. You unconsciously organize your memories into themes and patterns that make sense of your identity. You remember yourself as always having been shy, or always having loved books, or always having struggled with your parents, even when a careful examination of your actual past might reveal a much more complex and contradictory picture. The fascinating thing is that this reconstructive, selective, ever-changing nature of memory isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. Your memory isn't trying to preserve the past, it's trying to help you navigate the future. By constantly updating and recoloring your memories based on new experiences and current needs, your brain ensures that your past remains relevant and useful for your present life. This is why therapy can be so transformative. It doesn't just help you understand your past differently, it actually helps you remember your past differently. As you develop new insights about your relationships, your patterns, your responses to situations, those insights literally change your memories. The same childhood events can be remembered with compassion instead of shame, with understanding instead of confusion, with empowerment instead of victimization. You are not a prisoner of your past because your past is not fixed. You are the co-author of your own history, constantly revising and reinterpreting your story in ways that serve your ongoing becoming. Your memories are not anchors holding you to who you were, but bridges connecting who you were to who you are, to who you might become. Every human being is a storyteller, and the most important story you tell is the one you tell about yourself. Right now, if someone asked you to describe who you are, you wouldn't just list facts about your height, weight, and social security number. You would tell a story, a narrative that weaves together your past experiences, your current circumstances, your relationships, your dreams, and your understanding of what makes you uniquely you. But here's something remarkable about this story of self. You're not just telling it, you're constantly rewriting it. The person you understand yourself to be today is not quite the same person you understood yourself to be last year, and both of those versions are different from who you thought you were a decade ago. You are not discovering a fixed, essential self that was always there waiting to be found. You are actively constructing your identity, continuously authoring the story of who you are. This process is called personal narrative psychology, and it reveals one of the most creative and ongoing ways that you're constantly becoming someone new. Your identity is not a thing you have, but a story you tell, and like all good stories, it evolves with each telling, deepens with each revision, and changes as the author, that's you, gains new perspectives and experiences. Think about how you understand a significant event from your past, perhaps starting college, or ending a relationship, or losing someone you loved. When the event first happened, you interpreted it through the lens of who you were at that time, with the limited perspective and understanding you had then. But as years have passed, as you've grown and changed and gained new experiences, the meaning of that same event has probably shifted. What once felt like a devastating failure might now seem like a necessary redirection. What once felt like pure joy might now feel more complex, tinged with awareness of what you didn't know then. What once seemed like a random occurrence might now feel like part of a larger pattern in your life. The facts of what happened haven't changed, but the story you tell about what it means has evolved completely. This is because events don't have inherent meaning. Meaning is something we create through the stories we tell about our experiences. And as we grow and change, our capacity for meaning-making expands and deepens. We develop new vocabularies for understanding ourselves, new frameworks for interpreting our experiences, new perspectives on what matters and why. Consider how differently you might tell the story of your teenage years now compared to how you would have told it when you were actually a teenager. As a teenager, you were living inside the intensity of those experiences, focused on immediate concerns like fitting in, academic performance, or romantic drama. Now, looking back, you might see patterns that were invisible to you then, perhaps themes of identity, exploration, rebellion against authority, or the struggle to balance independence with the need for security. The teenager you were might not even recognize the way you tell those stories now. They might argue with your interpretations, insist that you're missing the point, that what seemed important to you then was the real truth of the experience. And in a way, they would be right. Their version of the story is true to who they were then, just as your current version is true to who you are now. This is why identity is better understood as an active construction rather than a discovery. You're not digging through layers of false selves to find your true self buried underneath. You're not uncovering a predetermined identity that was always there waiting to be revealed. Instead, you're actively creating yourself through the stories you tell, the interpretations you make, the meanings you assign to your experiences. This construction process is ongoing and recursive. The story you tell about who you are influences how you see new experiences, which in turn influences how you understand your past, which affects the story you tell about who you are. If you see yourself as someone who overcomes challenges, you're more likely to interpret difficulties as temporary obstacles rather than permanent limitations. If you see yourself as someone who learns from mistakes, you're more likely to view failures as educational opportunities rather than evidence of inadequacy. The stories that shape you are not just the ones you tell consciously. You're also influenced by cultural narratives about what kinds of lives are meaningful, family stories about who you are and where you come from, societal expectations about how people like you are supposed to behave, and media representations of what success and happiness look like. Some of these stories serve you well, providing frameworks for growth, resilience, and self-compassion. Others might be limiting, creating narrow definitions of what's possible for you or trapping you in patterns that no longer fit who you're becoming. Part of psychological growth involves becoming aware of these inherited stories and consciously choosing which ones to keep, which ones to revise, and which ones to abandon entirely. The beauty of understanding identity as narrative construction is that it puts you back in the author's chair of your own life. If you don't like the story you've been telling about yourself, you have the power to tell a different one. This doesn't mean denying or ignoring difficult experiences, but it might mean reframing them, finding different meanings in them, or placing them in a larger context that emphasizes growth rather than damage. Perhaps you've been telling yourself a story about being bad at relationships based on a few painful experiences. But you could also tell a story about being someone who's learning what kind of love you want and need. Someone who's brave enough to keep opening their heart despite past hurts. Someone who's developing wisdom about compatibility and communication through experience. The facts might be the same relationships ended, the same conflicts occurred, but the meaning changes everything. And it's not just positive thinking or self-deception. How you understand your experiences actually influences how you behave in future situations, which creates new experiences that can confirm or challenge your self-narrative. This is particularly striking when you consider how much you've changed since you were younger, even if younger was just a few years ago. The 16-year-old you had a particular story about who they were, what they wanted, what was important to them. If you could somehow have a conversation with that person now, you might find that you barely recognize each other. They might be surprised by the choices you've made, the things you've come to value, the ways you've changed your mind about what matters. You might be amused or even embarrassed by their concerns, their certainties, their dramatic interpretations of situations that now seem relatively minor. And yet, you're both the same person, connected by an unbroken thread of continuity, even as everything about you has transformed. This transformation happens partly through the accumulation of new experiences, but significantly through the ongoing revision of your self-narrative. As you encounter new ideas, meet new people, face new challenges, and discover new capabilities, you integrate these experiences into an evolving story of who you are. Sometimes this integration is gradual and smooth. You slowly modify your self-understanding as new experiences accumulate. Other times, it's more dramatic. involving what psychologists call narrative disruption, moments when your existing story about yourself proves inadequate to explain or integrate a new experience, forcing a more substantial revision of your identity. Major life transitions often trigger these narrative disruptions. Becoming a parent, losing a parent, changing careers, surviving a serious illness, falling deeply in love, ending a marriage, these experiences can shatter old stories about who you are and force you to construct new ones. The process can be disorienting and challenging, but it's also how growth happens. You literally become a new version of yourself through the process of telling a new story about who you are. The stories you tell about yourself also influence which aspects of your personality get expressed and developed. If you see yourself as creative, you're more likely to engage in creative activities, which develops your creative abilities, which reinforces your identity as a creative person. If you see yourself as analytical, you're more likely to approach problems analytically, which strengthens your analytical skills, which confirms your self-perception. This creates a feedback loop where your identity story partially creates the reality it describes. You become who you believe yourself to be, not through magic, but through the very real effects that self-perception has on behavior, attention, and choice. Let's pause here in this flowing river of change and simply breathe together. Take a moment to feel the rise and fall of your chest, the air moving in and out of your lungs, the steady rhythm that has been with you since your first breath and will be with you until your last. Consider the remarkable journey we've been taking together through the landscape of your changing self. We've explored how your body is constantly renewing itself at the cellular and atomic level, how your brain is continuously rewiring and growing new connections, how your memories are living, stories that evolve with each remembering, and how your very identity is an ongoing creative act rather than a fixed discovery. You are not the same person who began listening to these words. Not because you've had some dramatic revelation, but because this is simply how being human works. Every moment brings subtle changes, tiny shifts in understanding, microscopic modifications in the neural networks that create your thoughts and feelings. Rest in this knowledge for a moment. You are not broken if you feel different than you used to, if your priorities have shifted, if relationships that once felt essential now feel distant, if dreams that once seemed impossible now feel within reach. You are not inconsistent if you contradict your former self, if you change your mind about important things, if you discover new facets of your personality that surprise you. You are doing exactly what a living, growing, conscious being is supposed to do. You are becoming, always becoming, never quite finished, forever writing and rewriting the story of who you are. Breathe into this beautiful uncertainty, this creative instability, this magnificent work in progress that is your life. Let yourself feel held by the knowledge that change is not something that happens to you, but something you are actively participating in, something you have some authorship over, something that connects you to the fundamental creativity of the universe itself. Right now, as your eyes move across these words and your mind transforms these symbols into meaning, something extraordinary is happening in your brain. New neural pathways are being forged, existing connections are being strengthened, and the very architecture of your consciousness is being subtly but permanently altered. You are not the same person you were when you began this sentence, because any learning, even the simple act of understanding new information literally rewires your brain. This is perhaps one of the most hopeful truths in all of neuroscience. Your capacity to change, to grow, to develop new abilities and perspectives never stops. The old saying about not being able to teach an old dog new tricks is not just wrong when applied to dogs, it's spectacularly wrong when applied to humans. Your brain remains plastic, malleable, and eager to adapt throughout your entire lifetime. Every new skill you acquire creates new neural pathways in your brain. When you first learned to ride a bicycle, your brain had to construct entirely new networks connecting your visual cortex to see where you were going, your vestibular system to maintain balance, your motor cortex to coordinate pedaling and steering, and your cerebellum to integrate all these movements into smooth, coordinated action. At first, these pathways were like footpaths through tall grass, tentative, requiring conscious attention, easily lost. You had to think about every aspect of balancing, pedaling, steering. Your movements were jerky and uncertain. Your brain was working hard to coordinate all these new connections, sending signals back and forth as it learned to integrate this complex new skill. But with practice, those neural pathways became highways. The connections grew stronger, faster, more automatic. What once required intense concentration became so deeply embedded in your neural architecture that you can now ride a bicycle while thinking about other things entirely. The skill became literally part of who you are, written into the structure of your brain. This same process is happening every time you learn anything new. When you master a new recipe, your brain creates connections between your memory systems to remember the ingredients and steps, your motor systems to coordinate chopping, stirring, timing, and your sensory systems to recognize when something smells right or looks done. When you learn to play a musical instrument, you're building connections between your auditory processing centers, your motor cortex, and your memory systems that literally change the structure of your brain. Professional musicians show enlarged areas in the motor cortex that control finger movements, enhanced connections between the left and right hemispheres of their brains, and increased gray matter in areas associated with auditory processing. These aren't just temporary changes that fade when they stop practicing, they're permanent modifications to brain architecture that can persist for decades. But you don't have to be a professional musician or athlete to experience this neural rewiring. Every new word you learn, every new concept you understand, every new skill you develop creates lasting changes in your brain. Learning a second language builds new neural networks and strengthens the connections between different brain regions. People who are bilingual show enhanced cognitive flexibility, better attention control, and more efficient neural processing throughout their lives. Even simple activities like learning to juggle or memorizing poetry create measurable changes in brain structure. In one study, participants who learned to juggle showed increased gray matter in areas of the brain associated with visual motor coordination after just 6 weeks of practice. When they stopped practicing, some of these changes remained permanently, like a neurological souvenir of their learning experience. The concept of cognitive plasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize and adapt, extends far beyond learning specific skills. Your thinking patterns themselves can be rewired. If you tend to be anxious, you can literally train your brain to respond differently to stressful situations. If you tend to be pessimistic, you can create new neural pathways that make positive thinking more automatic. If you tend to be easily distracted, you can strengthen the neural networks associated with sustained attention. This is why therapy can be so transformative, why meditation can create lasting changes in personality, why cognitive behavioral therapy can effectively treat depression and anxiety. These approaches work by helping you create new neural pathways, literally building new ways of thinking and responding that become stronger with practice, while the old, problematic patterns gradually weaken from disuse. Your brain's plasticity is so remarkable that it can adapt even after significant injury. Stroke patients can sometimes regain lost functions as other areas of their brain take over the roles of damaged regions. People who lose their sight often develop enhanced hearing abilities as their visual cortex gets recruited to process auditory information. Children who have entire hemispheres of their brain removed due to severe epilepsy can still develop relatively normal cognitive abilities as the remaining hemisphere compensates. These dramatic examples of recovery highlight the incredible adaptability built into your nervous system. But the same principles operate in everyday life. Every time you push yourself slightly outside your comfort zone, every time you engage with something unfamiliar, every time you practice a skill or explore a new idea, you're encouraging your brain to adapt and grow. Physical exercise provides one of the most powerful stimuli for brain plasticity. Aerobic exercise increases the production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that promotes the growth and survival of neurons. Exercise also increases blood flow to the brain, stimulates the birth of new neurons in the hippocampus, and strengthens connections between different brain regions. But it's not just physical exercise that promotes brain plasticity. Mental exercise is equally important. Challenging cognitive activities like learning new skills, solving puzzles, reading complex material, or engaging in stimulating conversations all promote neural growth and connectivity. The key is novelty, and challenge your brain responds most strongly to experiences that are new and slightly difficult. Meditation and mindfulness practices provide particularly striking examples of how conscious mental training can reshape the brain. Regular meditators show increased gray matter density in areas associated with attention, emotional regulation, and self-awareness. They also show decreased activity in the default mode network, the brain regions that are active during mind-wandering and self-referential thinking. Even short-term meditation training can produce measurable changes. 8 weeks of mindfulness practice can increase cortical thickness in areas associated with attention and sensory processing, reduce activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, and strengthen connections between the prefrontal cortex and other brain regions involved in emotional regulation. These changes aren't just visible in brain scans, they translate into real-world differences in how meditators respond to stress, how they regulate their emotions, and how they maintain attention in challenging situations. The brain changes create functional changes that improve quality of life and psychological well-being. Travel and cultural exposure also promote brain plasticity. When you navigate new environments, try to communicate in unfamiliar languages or adapt to different cultural norms. You're challenging your brain in ways that promote growth and flexibility. People who have lived in multiple cultures show enhanced creativity, better problem-solving abilities, and more flexible thinking patterns. Even social interactions rewire your brain. Every meaningful conversation, every new relationship, every social challenge you navigate creates and strengthens neural pathways. Your brain has specialized networks for understanding other people's emotions, predicting their behavior, and coordinating social interactions. The more you engage these networks, the stronger and more sophisticated they become. The beautiful thing about brain plasticity is that it's not just something that happens to you, it's something you can actively participate in. By choosing to learn new things, challenge yourself, engage with unfamiliar experiences, and practice new ways of thinking and responding, you're literally sculpting your own brain, creating the neural architecture that will support the person you want to become. Think about your emotional life like the weather. Right now, you might be experiencing the psychological equivalent of a sunny day, feeling content, optimistic, energized. Or perhaps you're in more of a cloudy period, not exactly sad, but not particularly bright either. Maybe you're experiencing an emotional storm, anger, grief, anxiety, or fear moving through your inner landscape with intensity and power. Just as the weather changes constantly, sometimes gradually, sometimes dramatically, your emotional states are in constant flux. What you're feeling right now is not a permanent feature of who you are, but a temporary pattern in the complex atmospheric system of your inner life. And just as the weather changes over both short and long timescales, your emotions shift moment by moment, day by day, season by season, and year by year. This meteorological metaphor for emotions reveals something profound about the constantly changing nature of your psychological self. You are not your current emotional state any more than your city is defined by today's weather. Emotions are experiences you have, not fixed aspects of who you are. They arise, persist for a while, and then fade away, replaced by new emotional weather patterns. But unlike actual weather, which you can only observe and respond to, you have some influence over your emotional climate. The choices you make, the habits you develop, the thoughts you practice, and the relationships you cultivate all affect the general patterns of your emotional life. You can't control the weather of your feelings moment to moment, but you can influence the overall climate of your emotional experience. Your emotional baseline, the general mood you return to when nothing particular is happening, gradually shifts over time. The emotional tone that feels normal to you now is probably different from what felt normal 5 years ago, and it will be different again 5 years from now. This happens partly through life experiences, partly through biological changes, and partly through the accumulated effects of how you've learned to think about and respond to your emotions. Hormones play a particularly fascinating role in reshaping your emotional landscape over time. The hormonal changes of adolescence don't just affect physical development, they literally rewire the emotional centers of your brain, making teenagers more sensitive to social rejection, more responsive to peer influence, and more likely to experience intense emotions. These aren't character flaws or signs of immaturity, they're the predictable effects of a brain that's being redesigned by powerful hormonal influences. Similarly, the hormonal changes that accompany major life transitions, pregnancy, menopause, aging, can significantly alter emotional patterns and personality traits. What feels like a fundamental change in who you are might actually be the natural result of shifting hormonal influences on brain function. The you that emerges from these transitions isn't better or worse than the previous you, just different. adapted to a new phase of life. Even shorter-term hormonal cycles create predictable changes in emotional patterns. Many people experience mood changes that correspond to monthly hormonal fluctuations, seasonal variations in light exposure, or daily rhythms of cortisol and other stress hormones. Understanding these patterns can help you recognize that temporary emotional states are often influenced by biological rhythms rather than reflecting permanent aspects of your personality or lasting problems in your life. The microbiome, the vast ecosystem of bacteria living in your digestive system, also influences your emotional life in ways that scientists are just beginning to understand. These microscopic residents produce neurotransmitters, including serotonin and dopamine, that directly affect mood and cognition. Changes in your microbiome, whether due to diet, stress, illness, or antibiotic use, can create noticeable shifts in your emotional patterns. This means that the person you are emotionally might be literally different depending on what you've been eating, how well you've been sleeping, what season it is, where you are in various biological cycles, and even which bacteria happen to be thriving in your gut at the moment. You might be more patient and optimistic in spring than in winter, more creative and social when you're well rested than when you're sleep deprived, more anxious after a course of antibiotics than before. Seasonal changes provide some of the most obvious examples of how external factors influence your emotional climate. Many people experience predictable mood changes, with the seasons feeling more energetic and social in summer, more contemplative and inward-focused in winter. These aren't just psychological responses to weather, they're biological responses to changes in light exposure, temperature, and other environmental factors that influence brain chemistry. Seasonal affective disorder represents an extreme version of these normal seasonal variations, but even people who don't meet the criteria for this condition often notice that their emotional baseline shifts with the seasons. You might be a slightly different version of yourself in December than you are in July, not because your fundamental personality has changed, but because your brain is responding to different environmental inputs. Social environments also act like emotional weather systems, influencing your mood and behavior in ways that can feel almost like atmospheric pressure. Spending time with optimistic, energetic people can lift your spirits and increase your own energy levels. Being around anxious or negative people can leave you feeling drained or worried, even if their concerns have nothing to do with your life. This emotional contagion happens through multiple pathways, mirror neurons that automatically mimic the facial expressions and body language of people around you, unconscious synchronization of breathing and heart rate patterns, and conscious processing of others' emotional signals. You literally become slightly different versions of yourself in different social contexts, not because you're being fake or inauthentic, but because human beings are fundamentally social creatures whose emotional states naturally influence each other. The stories you tell yourself about your emotions also shape your emotional weather patterns over time. If you interpret sadness as a sign that something is wrong with your life, you might create additional layers of anxiety and self-criticism that intensify and prolong the original sad feeling. If you view anger as evidence that you're a bad person, you might suppress it in ways that create tension and resentment. But if you understand emotions as temporary weather patterns that provide information about your needs and responses to situations, you can develop a different relationship with them. Sadness might be information that you're grieving a loss or missing something important. Anger might be information that a boundary has been crossed or a value has been threatened. Anxiety might be information that you're facing uncertainty or that something important to you is at stake. This shift in perspective, from seeing emotions as permanent features of self to understanding them as temporary information systems, can dramatically change your emotional climate over time. Instead of being controlled by your emotions or trying to eliminate uncomfortable feelings, you can learn to work with your emotional weather, understanding its patterns and responding skillfully to its changes. Mindfulness and meditation practices offer particularly powerful tools for changing your relationship with emotions. Rather than being caught up in emotional storms or trying to force sunny skies, mindfulness teaches you to observe emotional weather patterns with curiosity and acceptance. This doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means developing the capacity to experience emotions fully while maintaining some perspective on their temporary nature. Regular mindfulness practice can actually change the structure and function of brain regions involved in emotional regulation. Meditators show decreased activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system. and increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive control center. They also show stronger connections between these regions, which translates into better ability to regulate emotions and recover from emotional disturbances. Physical practices like exercise, yoga, and breathwork also influence your emotional climate by affecting the nervous system directly. Aerobic exercise increases the production of endorphins and other mood-regulating chemicals. Yoga and breathwork activate the parasympathetic nervous system, promoting feelings of calm and relaxation. These practices don't just make you feel better temporarily, they create lasting changes in your baseline emotional patterns. Sleep plays a crucial role in emotional regulation, acting like overnight maintenance for your emotional weather systems. During sleep, your brain processes the emotional experiences of the day, consolidating important memories and clearing away emotional residue that might otherwise accumulate. Poor sleep doesn't just make you tired, it makes you more emotionally reactive, less able to regulate your responses, and more vulnerable to anxiety and depression. The foods you eat also influence your emotional weather through their effects on blood sugar, inflammation, and neurotransmitter production. A diet high in processed foods and sugar can create emotional volatility, while a diet rich in whole foods, healthy fats, and anti-inflammatory compounds can promote emotional stability and resilience. Understanding emotions as weather systems rather than fixed personality traits opens up possibilities for conscious participation in your own emotional evolution. You can't control whether storms arise in your emotional life. Loss, disappointment, conflict, and challenge are inevitable parts of being human. But you can develop skills for navigating emotional weather with greater resilience, wisdom, and grace. You can learn to recognize the early signs of emotional weather changes and respond appropriately, seeking shelter during storms, enjoying clear skies when they arise, and accepting that both sunshine and rain are natural parts of the emotional landscape. You can develop practices that promote emotional resilience and create conditions that support your overall emotional well-being. Most importantly, you can remember that just as no weather pattern lasts forever, no emotional state is permanent. The sadness you're feeling now will shift. The anxiety that seems overwhelming today will change. The joy you're experiencing in this moment will eventually give way to other feelings. This impermanence isn't a flaw in the system, it's what allows for growth, healing, and the constant possibility of renewal. You are not stuck with your current emotional patterns any more than you're stuck with today's weather. Both are part of larger, dynamic systems that are constantly changing, constantly offering new possibilities, constantly writing new chapters in the ongoing story of who you are becoming. Explores emotions as dynamic weather systems that constantly shift and change, influenced by biology, environment, and our responses to them. The script weaves together cutting-edge neuroscience and psychology with poetic language and gentle metaphors, perfect for the sleepy scientist's audience, seeking both education and relaxation. Each chapter flows naturally into the next, with the characteristic gentle pauses and breathing spaces that make the content accessible for late-night listening. The writing maintains the channel's signature balance of scientific accuracy with wonder and accessibility, inviting listeners to marvel at the constant reconstruction of their mental selves, while finding comfort in the knowledge that change is not only normal but necessary for growth and adaptation. The gentle transition section provides a perfect breathing space in the middle of the act, allowing listeners to integrate the concepts while maintaining the soothing, contemplative atmosphere that makes this content ideal for bedtime listening or quiet reflection. Would you like me to continue with Act 3, the social you in relationship, or work on any other section of the script? Have you ever noticed how you become a slightly different version of yourself, depending on who you're with? It's subtle, perhaps, but unmistakable once you pay attention. The person you are when you're having coffee with your best friend is not quite the same person you are when you're sitting across from your parents at dinner. The version of yourself that emerges in a work meeting differs from the one that appears during a quiet evening with your romantic partner. This isn't about being fake or inauthentic, it's about one of the most fundamental truths of human nature. We are inherently social beings, and our sense of self is not a fixed, internal essence, but something that emerges and shifts within the context of our relationships. Like light refracting differently through various prisms, your core self expresses different aspects, different colors, different intensities depending on the social environment you find yourself in. This phenomenon is called the social construction of self, and it reveals something beautiful about human nature. We are not isolated islands of consciousness, but interconnected beings whose very identity is woven through our connections with others. You literally become different versions of yourself in different relationships, not because you lack a solid sense of self, but because having a solid sense of self includes the capacity to respond authentically to different social contexts. Think about how you are with your childhood friends compared to colleagues you've known for only a few months. With old friends, dormant aspects of your personality might resurface, perhaps a playfulness or irreverence that rarely appears in professional settings. You might find yourself using expressions you haven't used in years, laughing at types of humor that don't amuse you in other contexts, or feeling comfortable with levels of vulnerability that would seem inappropriate elsewhere. This isn't regression or inconsistency, it's the beautiful complexity of a fully developed human personality expressing different facets of itself in response to different relational contexts. Your old friends knew you during formative periods, and their presence can activate neural networks and emotional patterns that remain dormant in other relationships. You become, temporarily, a version of yourself that includes echoes of who you were at different stages of your development. The way you are with your parents often reveals this social construction most clearly. Regardless of your age or accomplishments, you might find yourself slipping into familiar patterns, perhaps becoming more compliant or more rebellious, more careful with your words, or more emotionally reactive than you are in other relationships. These patterns were formed during the most impressionable years of your development, when your sense of self was still forming in relationship to these particular people. Your parents knew you before you knew yourself, and their presence can activate deeply embedded relational patterns that feel almost automatic. This isn't about being childish or immature, it's about the profound ways that our earliest relationships shape the neural pathways through which we experience ourselves in connection with others. Cultural identity adds another layer to this social construction of self. If you've ever moved between different cultural contexts, perhaps moving to a new country, or even just traveling between different regions with distinct cultural norms, you might have noticed how different aspects of your personality become more or less prominent, depending on the cultural environment. In cultures that value individual expression, you might find yourself becoming more assertive, more willing to voice personal opinions, more comfortable taking up space in conversations. In cultures that emphasize collective harmony, you might become more attentive to group dynamics, more careful about maintaining social cohesion, more aware of how your actions affect others. These shifts aren't superficial accommodations to social expectations, they represent genuine changes in how you experience and express yourself. Different cultures activate different neural networks, different emotional patterns, different ways of processing social information. You are, in very real ways, a slightly different person in different cultural contexts. Language plays a particularly fascinating role in this cultural construction of self. If you speak multiple languages, you might have noticed that you feel like a somewhat different person when speaking different languages. This isn't just because of vocabulary limitations or grammatical structures. Different languages actually activate different conceptual frameworks for understanding self and world. Each language carries within it particular ways of categorizing experience, specific emotional tonalities, distinct rhythms of thought and expression. Spanish might activate warmer, more emotionally expressive aspects of your personality. English might bring out more analytical, precise dimensions of your thinking. The language your parents spoke to you as a child might activate more vulnerable, dependent aspects of self. Recent research in linguistics and neuroscience has revealed that people who speak multiple languages often report feeling like they have different personalities in different languages. Brain imaging studies confirm that different languages activate somewhat different neural networks, suggesting that multilingual individuals literally have multiple, partially distinct neural selves. But even if you speak only one language, the specific communities and relationships within which you use that language shape how you experience and express yourself. The version of English you speak with your grandmother differs from the version you use with teenagers, which differs again from professional contexts or intimate relationships. Each linguistic community calls forth different aspects of your personality and different ways of being in the world. Social media has created fascinating new contexts for this social construction of self. Different platforms often call forth different versions of who you are, perhaps more professional on LinkedIn, more casual on Instagram, more opinionated on Twitter. These aren't false selves, but different facets of your complex personality responding to different social contexts and audiences. The remarkable thing is that each of these context-dependent versions of yourself is authentic. The more serious version of yourself that emerges in professional settings is not more or less real than the playful version that appears with close friends. The more careful version that emerges around your parents is not more or less genuine than the more spontaneous version that appears with peers. This multiplicity of self is not a problem to be solved, but a feature of healthy psychological development. The capacity to express different aspects of yourself in different relationships demonstrates social intelligence, emotional flexibility, and psychological maturity. It shows that you understand the subtle requirements of different social contexts and can respond appropriately while maintaining your essential integrity. What remains constant across these different social contexts is not a fixed personality, but something more fundamental: your core values, your capacity for love and growth, your unique way of perceiving and responding to the world. These deeper aspects of self provide continuity and coherence, while allowing for the beautiful variability of expression that makes relationships rich and dynamic. When you fall in love really, deeply, transformatively in love, you don't just gain a relationship. You literally become a different person. Not metaphorically, not poetically, but measurably, neurologically, fundamentally different. Love doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how your brain is structured, how your hormones flow, how your nervous system responds to the world. The neurochemistry of love is one of the most powerful forces for personality change that humans can experience. When you're in the early stages of romantic love, your brain is flooded with a cocktail of chemicals: dopamine, norepinephrine, phenylethylamine, that create the euphoria, obsessive thinking, and heightened energy characteristic of new love. But more profound changes are happening beneath this neurochemical storm. Oxytocin and vasopressin, often called the bonding hormones, literally rewire your brain's reward and attachment systems. Oxytocin, released during physical intimacy, eye contact, and emotional connection, strengthens neural pathways associated with trust, empathy, and pair bonding. Vasopressin enhances feelings of attachment and can trigger territorial or protective behaviors toward your beloved. These hormonal changes create measurable alterations in personality that can persist long after the initial neurochemical rush of new love has settled. People in love often become more optimistic, more generous, more willing to take risks, more open to new experiences. They may also become more anxious about separation, more attentive to their partner's needs and moods, more motivated to maintain the relationship. Brain imaging studies of people in love show increased activity in areas associated with reward, motivation, and attachment, and decreased activity in regions involved in critical thinking and negative judgment. This isn't a temporary state that fades when the scanning session ends. These neural changes reflect genuine reorganization of brain function that influences behavior, decision-making, and emotional responses across many contexts. Long-term relationships create even more profound neuroplastic changes through what scientists call mutual neuroplasticity, the process by which couples' brains adapt to each other over time. Partners in stable, long-term relationships often develop synchronized patterns of brain activity, similar stress responses, and coordinated emotional rhythms. They literally become neurologically attuned to each other. This attunement goes beyond conscious awareness. Couples who have been together for many years often unconsciously mirror each other's posture, breathing patterns, and even heart rates. Their nervous systems become partially synchronized, creating a shared physiological state that underlies emotional intimacy and mutual understanding. The changes that come with parenthood represent perhaps the most dramatic personality transformation that humans can experience. Pregnancy and early parenthood trigger massive hormonal shifts that reshape brain structure and function in ways that can persist for decades. Mothers experience increases in oxytocin, prolactin, and other hormones that enhance nurturing behaviors, increase sensitivity to infant cues, and strengthen motivation to protect and care for offspring. But fathers experience significant neurological changes too. Men in committed relationships with pregnant partners show decreases in testosterone and increases in prolactin and cortisol. Their brains show increased activity in areas associated with empathy, attachment, and caregiving behaviors. These changes help prepare them for the psychological transition to parenthood. The birth of a child reorganizes parents' entire motivational and priority systems. Brain regions associated with reward and attachment become hyper-responsive to infant-related stimuli. Parents often find themselves caring intensely about things that never mattered to them before. Child safety, educational opportunities, the kind of world they're leaving for the next generation. This transformation can be so complete that parents sometimes feel like they barely remember who they were before having children. The pre-parenting self doesn't disappear, but it gets reorganized around this new central organizing principle of caring for another human being. Parents often report that their previous concerns and priorities seem less important, while new capacities for love, worry, and protective instinct emerge with surprising intensity. Loss and grief represent another profound force for neurological and personality change. The death of someone deeply loved doesn't just create temporary emotional pain, it can fundamentally reorganize brain function and personality structure. Bereaved individuals often experience lasting changes in their priorities, values, and sense of what matters in life. Grief literally changes the brain. Areas associated with reward and attachment, which were previously activated by thoughts of the deceased person, must be reorganized to function without that source of connection and meaning. This neurological reorganization can take months or years, and the person who emerges from deep grief is often fundamentally changed by the experience. Many people who have navigated significant loss report becoming more compassionate, more aware of life's fragility, more appreciative of present relationships, and less concerned with trivial matters. They may develop what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, positive personality changes that emerge from working through profound challenges. The neuroscience of attachment reveals how deeply our relationships shape our developing brains from the very beginning of life. The quality of early attachment relationships literally sculpts the neural pathways that will govern emotional regulation, stress response, and relationship patterns throughout life. Securely attached children, who experience consistent, responsive caregiving, develop robust neural networks for emotional regulation and stress management. They typically become adults who are comfortable with intimacy, effective at managing difficult emotions, and capable of forming stable, satisfying relationships. Children who experience inconsistent or unresponsive caregiving develop different neural patterns, ones that may be more vigilant for signs of rejection or abandonment, more reactive to stress, or more defensive in relationships. But the remarkable plasticity of the human brain means that these early patterns can be modified through later relationships and conscious therapeutic work. Healing relationships, whether romantic partnerships, close friendships, or therapeutic relationships, can literally rewire neural patterns established in early attachment experiences. The brain's capacity for change throughout life means that early relationship experiences, while influential, are not destiny. Love, in its many forms, retains the power to transform us throughout our entire lifespan. We are social creatures, shaped by every hand we hold, every conversation we share, every heart that beats in rhythm with our own. Take a moment to feel this truth in your body, the way your breathing might slow when you're with someone who makes you feel safe, the way your energy might increase in the presence of someone who inspires you, the way your entire nervous system can relax or activate based on the quality of connection you're experiencing. You are not a separate self who occasionally relates to others. You are a relational being whose very sense of identity emerges through connection, whose brain is constantly being shaped by the quality of your relationships, whose personality continues to evolve through every meaningful interaction you have. Rest in this interconnectedness for a moment. Feel the ways you've been changed by love, not just romantic love, but all the forms of love that have touched your life. The way a mentor's belief in you helped you believe in yourself. The way a friend's laughter taught you new ways of finding joy. The way caring for someone else opened capacities for tenderness you didn't know you possessed. There's something beautiful happening in the aging brain that our youth-obsessed culture often overlooks. As our bodies slow down, our wisdom speeds up. While we tend to focus on the losses that come with aging, declining reaction times, occasional memory lapses, physical limitations, we miss the remarkable gains that emerge in the later decades of life. The aging brain undergoes a fascinating transformation that neuroscientists are only beginning to understand. Rather than simply declining, older brains develop what researchers call bilateral processing, the ability to use both hemispheres of the brain more equally. While younger brains tend to be more specialized, with different functions strongly lateralized to one side or the other, older brains become more integrated, more collaborative in their internal functioning. This integration creates cognitive advantages that can more than compensate for age-related changes in processing speed. Older adults often excel at tasks requiring wisdom, judgment, and the integration of complex information. They're better at seeing the big picture, understanding nuanced situations, and making decisions that balance multiple competing priorities. The nature of intelligence itself changes across the lifespan in ways that reveal the beautiful trajectory of human cognitive development. Psychologists distinguish between two types of intelligence: fluid intelligence, which involves processing speed, working memory, and the ability to solve novel problems quickly, and crystallized intelligence, which involves accumulated knowledge, vocabulary, and the ability to use learned information effectively. Fluid intelligence peaks in young adulthood and gradually declines with age. This is what most cognitive tests measure, and it's why older adults sometimes perform less well on traditional intelligence assessments. But crystallized intelligence continues to grow throughout life, often reaching its peak in the 7th or 8th decade. This means that while a 70-year-old might be slower at solving novel puzzles than a 20-year-old, they're likely to be superior at tasks involving judgment, wisdom, and the application of life experience. They have larger vocabularies, richer conceptual networks, and more sophisticated frameworks for understanding human behavior and social situations. Perhaps most remarkably, older adults often become more emotionally balanced and resilient. Research consistently shows that emotional well-being tends to improve with age, despite the physical challenges and losses that older adults face. Older people report greater life satisfaction, less anxiety and depression, and better emotional regulation than younger adults. This improvement in emotional functioning appears to result from both neural changes and psychological development. The aging brain shows decreased activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, and increased activity in prefrontal regions involved in emotional regulation. Older adults literally become neurologically better at managing difficult emotions and maintaining emotional equilibrium. But the emotional advantages of aging aren't just neurological, they're also psychological. Older adults have accumulated decades of experience in navigating life's challenges. They've survived losses, disappointments, and setbacks, and this experience creates resilience and perspective that younger people often lack. Older adults are also better at what psychologists call selective optimization with compensation, the ability to focus energy and attention on what matters most while finding creative ways to work around limitations. They become more selective about relationships, choosing to invest in connections that are meaningful and letting superficial relationships fade. They become more selective about goals, focusing on objectives that align with their deeper values rather than external expectations. This selectivity reflects a kind of practical wisdom that emerges from recognizing the finite nature of time and energy. When you understand that your resources are limited, you become better at using them wisely. Older adults often report feeling more authentic, more comfortable with themselves, and less concerned with others' opinions than they were when younger. The concept of generativity, the drive to contribute to future generations, becomes particularly important in later life. As people age, they often develop a powerful motivation to leave something meaningful behind, whether through mentoring younger people, creating artistic or intellectual works, or contributing to causes larger than themselves. This generative drive reflects a beautiful expansion of identity beyond the boundaries of individual self. While younger adults are often focused on personal achievement and acquisition, older adults frequently become more concerned with legacy, meaning, and contribution to the ongoing human story. Generativity can take many forms: grandparenting, teaching, volunteering, creating, building institutions, or simply modeling wisdom and resilience for younger generations. This outward focus often brings a sense of purpose and fulfillment that compensates for age-related losses in other areas of life. The wisdom that emerges in later life represents a kind of cognitive achievement that's different from, but equally valuable, as the quick processing and novel problem-solving abilities of youth. Wisdom involves the integration of cognitive, emotional, and experiential knowledge in service of sound judgment and effective action. Wise older adults demonstrate what researchers call cognitive complexity, the ability to hold multiple perspectives simultaneously, tolerate ambiguity and contradiction, and recognize that most important life questions don't have simple answers. They've learned that life is nuanced, that good and bad often coexist, that most situations involve trade-offs rather than clear-cut choices. This cognitive sophistication allows older adults to serve as invaluable counselors, mediators, and guides for younger generations. They've seen enough of life's patterns to recognize recurring themes while remaining open to new variations. They've made enough mistakes to develop humility while gaining enough successes to maintain confidence. Perhaps most beautifully, many older adults develop what could be called cosmic perspective, an awareness of their place within larger patterns of time, nature, and human history. Having lived long enough to witness multiple cycles of social change, technological development, and cultural evolution, they often develop a more philosophical view of temporary problems and a deeper appreciation for enduring values. This perspective can be both humbling and liberating. Recognizing the temporary nature of most concerns can reduce anxiety and increase equanimity. Understanding the continuity of human experience across generations can provide comfort during difficult times and inspire contribution to future well-being. The aging process, when viewed through the lens of continued growth and development rather than just decline, reveals itself as another chapter in the ongoing story of human becoming. Just as childhood and adolescence involve specific developmental tasks and achievements, later life has its own unique opportunities for growth, wisdom, and contribution. The person you become in your later decades will be different from the person you are now, not just older, but potentially wiser, more integrated, more emotionally balanced, and more focused on what truly matters. The journey of aging, when embraced with curiosity and grace, becomes another form of the beautiful transformation that characterizes human life from beginning to end. Let's venture into the strangest territory of all, in our exploration of your constantly changing self, the quantum realm that underlies every atom, every molecule, every cellular process that makes you who you are. Here, at the intersection of physics and biology, we discover that even at the most fundamental level, uncertainty isn't just a feature of the universe, it's woven into the very fabric of your existence. You might think that once we drill down to the basic mechanics of life, the copying of DNA, the folding of proteins, the firing of neurons, we'd find clockwork precision, predictable cause and effect, the reliable machinery of biological processes. But quantum mechanics reveals something far more mysterious and beautiful. Even your most essential life processes are governed by probability rather than certainty, by quantum uncertainty rather than classical determinism. This isn't just abstract physics with no bearing on your lived experience. Quantum effects are operating right now in your cells, influencing processes that determine everything from how your DNA repairs itself to how your brain processes thoughts and memories. You are not just made of quantum particles, you are a quantum being, your very existence dependent on the strange, probabilistic dance of subatomic reality. Consider photosynthesis, one of the most important processes on Earth, and one that ultimately makes your existence possible. When plants capture sunlight and convert it into chemical energy, they achieve an efficiency that human-made solar panels can only dream of. Nearly 100% efficiency in transferring energy from light-absorbing molecules to reaction centers. For decades, this extraordinary efficiency puzzled scientists. How could biological systems, which seem so messy and imprecise compared to engineered machines, outperform our best technology so dramatically? The answer, it turns out, lies in quantum mechanics. Plants use quantum coherence, the ability of quantum systems to exist in multiple states simultaneously, to explore all possible energy transfer pathways at once and choose the most efficient route. This same quantum coherence might be operating in your own cells. Some researchers propose that quantum effects play a role in cellular respiration, the process by which your mitochondria convert glucose into the energy currency that powers every function of your body. The remarkable efficiency of this process, like photosynthesis, might depend on quantum mechanical principles that allow energy to find optimal pathways through the complex molecular landscape of your cells. Even more intriguingly, quantum effects might influence consciousness itself. While this remains highly speculative and controversial, some researchers propose that quantum processes in microtubules, tiny structural components within neurons, could play a role in the generation of conscious experience. The idea is that quantum coherence in these cellular structures might allow for the kind of unified, integrated processing that characterizes consciousness. Whether or not quantum mechanics directly influences consciousness, there's no doubt that quantum processes affect the cellular processes that underlie thought and memory. The firing of neurons depends on the movement of ions through cellular membranes, processes that are ultimately governed by quantum mechanical tunneling, the strange quantum phenomenon that allows particles to pass through barriers that should be impenetrable, according to classical physics. Quantum tunneling is happening right now in your brain as you process these words. Electrons are tunneling through protein barriers. Ions are crossing membranes in ways that classical physics says should be impossible, and these quantum events are contributing to the neural activity that creates your thoughts, emotions, and perceptions. Perhaps most remarkably, DNA mutations, the ultimate source of biological change and evolution, are fundamentally quantum events. When cosmic radiation or chemical damage affects your DNA, the resulting changes often occur through quantum processes. A quantum particle interaction can cause a chemical bond to break or form in ways that alter the genetic code, potentially changing the instructions that govern cellular function. These quantum-level changes in your DNA are happening constantly. Your cells are exposed to background radiation from space, from the Earth itself, from the food you eat and the air you breathe. Most of these quantum interactions are harmless, repaired by your cellular maintenance systems. But some persist, creating the genetic variation that makes you subtly different from who you were yesterday at the molecular level. This means that quantum uncertainty isn't just an abstract principle, it's a source of the biological change that makes you who you are. Random quantum events are constantly introducing tiny variations into your genetic code, and while most of these changes are neutral or harmful, some might enhance cellular function or contribute to the adaptability that helps you navigate environmental challenges. The beautiful uncertainty that quantum mechanics reveals extends to every level of biological function. Protein folding, the process by which long chains of amino acids assume the precise three-dimensional shapes that enable them to function, involves quantum effects that influence which configurations are most stable. The proteins in your body right now have achieved their functional shapes through processes that involve quantum probability rather than classical certainty. Even the enzymes that catalyze biochemical reactions in your cells might use quantum effects to enhance their efficiency. Some enzymes appear to use quantum tunneling to speed up chemical reactions, allowing biological processes to occur at rates that would be impossible through classical chemistry alone. This quantum foundation of life means that uncertainty isn't a flaw in the biological system. It's a feature that enables the flexibility, adaptability, and creativity that characterize living systems. The quantum realm's probabilistic nature allows for the kind of exploration and optimization that enables evolution, adaptation, and the constant fine-tuning of biological processes. In a sense, you are a quantum experiment, that the universe is conducting a temporary arrangement of quantum particles and processes that has somehow achieved the extraordinary feat of self-awareness. Your consciousness emerges from quantum processes, your thoughts depend on quantum tunneling, your genetic code is modified by quantum interactions, and your very existence relies on quantum effects that enable the biological processes that sustain life. This quantum perspective reveals that change isn't just something that happens to you, it's built into the fundamental structure of reality at the level of your atoms and molecules. The uncertainty principle that governs quantum mechanics means that even your most basic biological processes involve probability rather than certainty, exploration rather than predetermined outcomes. You are not a classical machine running predictable programs, but a quantum symphony of possibilities, constantly exploring new configurations, constantly responding to quantum fluctuations that introduce novelty and change into every aspect of your being. At the deepest level, you are made of uncertainty itself, and this uncertainty is what makes growth, adaptation, and transformation not just possible, but inevitable. Step outside on a clear night and look up at the stars. Each point of light you see is a sun, many of them much larger and brighter than our own, and many of them already dead. Their light traveling across impossible distances to reach your eyes years or centuries after the stars themselves have winked out of existence. This simple act of stargazing connects you to the deepest story of all the 8 billion-year journey that led to this moment. To you, to your capacity to wonder about your place in the vast cosmic story. To understand how constantly you're changing, we must zoom out to the largest possible perspective and see yourself not just as an individual human being, but as a temporary arrangement of matter and energy in the grand symphony of cosmic evolution. From this perspective, your entire life, all your changes, all your growth, all your becoming, is like a single note in an enormous composition that has been playing since the beginning of time. The elements that compose your body right now were forged in the nuclear furnaces of stars that lived and died billions of years before the Earth was even formed. The carbon in your muscles, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, all of these elements were created through nuclear fusion in stellar cores, under pressures and temperatures so extreme that hydrogen atoms were crushed together to form heavier elements. When those ancient stars exhausted their nuclear fuel, they died in spectacular supernova explosions that scattered these newly formed elements across the galaxy. Those stellar death throes became the seeds of new star systems, new planets, and eventually new life. The violent death of ancient suns became the gentle birth of everything you are. Think about this. The iron atoms in your hemoglobin, carrying oxygen through your bloodstream at this very moment, were forged in the core of a massive star that collapsed and exploded perhaps 8 billion years ago. Those atoms have been cycling through the universe ever since part of cosmic dust clouds, part of the primordial Earth, part of ancient oceans, part of countless living beings before becoming, temporarily, part of you. Your hydrogen atoms are even more ancient. Most of them were formed in the first few minutes after the Big Bang itself, when the universe was so hot and dense that nuclear reactions occurred freely throughout space. The hydrogen in the water you drink, in every molecule of H2O in your body, carries within it the memory of the universe's birth. This cosmic perspective reveals the beautiful, bittersweet nature of your existence. You are simultaneously brand new, a unique arrangement of matter and energy that has never existed before and will never exist again, and unimaginably ancient, composed of elements that have been cycling through the universe since before the Earth existed. Your life, from this cosmic perspective, is like a brief eddy in a vast river, a temporary pattern that emerges from the flow of matter and energy through space and time. You maintain your identity and coherence for a few decades, but the atoms that compose you continue their cosmic journey, and eventually they will become part of other patterns, other arrangements, other temporary expressions of the universe's creativity. Geological time provides another lens for understanding your place in the larger story of change. The Earth itself is about 4.6 billion years old, and life has existed for roughly 3.8 billion years. But humans, our species, Homo sapiens, have existed for only about 300,000 years, and civilization as we know it for only about 10,000 years. From the perspective of geological time, your entire life is shorter than a single frame in a very long movie. The mountains you see as permanent have risen and eroded away countless times. The continents have drifted across the globe, collided and separated, been covered by oceans and exposed as dry land. Species have emerged, flourished, and gone extinct in cycles that make human history look like a brief flicker. And yet, from another perspective, you represent the culmination of an extraordinary evolutionary journey. Every one of your ancestors, stretching back through millions of generations to the first self-replicating molecules in ancient seas, successfully survived long enough to reproduce. You are the current endpoint of an unbroken chain of survival and adaptation that extends back to the very beginning of life on Earth. The DNA in your cells carries within it the history of this entire journey. Embedded in your genetic code are traces of ancient viral infections that affected your pre-human ancestors, remnants of genes that were crucial for survival in prehistoric environments, and regulatory sequences that were fine-tuned through millions of years of evolutionary pressure. You are not separate from natural history, you are natural history, temporarily organized into the pattern of consciousness that experiences itself as you. The same evolutionary processes that shaped dinosaurs and redwood trees and bacteria have shaped you. The same physical laws that govern the motion of galaxies govern the biochemical processes in your cells. This cosmic perspective can be both humbling and liberating. Humbling because it reveals how brief and small your individual existence is in the context of cosmic time and space. The problems that feel overwhelming, the achievements that seem monumentally important, the conflicts that consume your attention, all of these are temporary fluctuations in a vast, ongoing process that dwarfs human concerns. But this perspective is also profoundly liberating because it connects you to something much larger than your individual worries and limitations. You are not an accident or an anomaly. You are an expression of the universe's capacity for complexity, consciousness, and wonder. You are the cosmos becoming aware of itself, the universe developing the ability to contemplate its own existence. The fact that you can look up at the stars and understand something about how they work, that you can contemplate the age of the universe and your place within it, that you can feel awe and wonder at the beauty and complexity of existence. This represents an extraordinary achievement in cosmic evolution. Through you, the universe has developed the capacity for self-reflection, for asking questions about meaning and purpose, for creating art and music and poetry that celebrates the mystery of existence. Your constant changing, viewed from this cosmic perspective, becomes part of a much larger story of change and transformation that has been unfolding since the beginning of time. The same creative force that transforms hydrogen into heavier elements in stellar cores, that shapes galaxies and solar systems, that drives the evolution of life on Earth, is expressing itself through your personal growth and transformation. Every time you learn something new, develop a new skill, deepen a relationship, or gain a new insight, you are participating in the universe's ongoing creative evolution. Your personal becoming is connected to the cosmic becoming that has been happening for nearly 14 billion years. When you eventually die, and this is both the most sobering and most beautiful aspect of the cosmic perspective, the atoms that currently compose you will continue their journey through the universe. Some will become part of other living beings, some will cycle through the atmosphere and oceans, some might eventually be incorporated into new stars and planets. In this sense, death isn't an ending but a transformation, a redistribution of the matter and energy that temporarily took the form of you. The universe will continue its creative work, and the atoms that made your thoughts possible, that carried your love, that enabled your wonder and growth, will find new patterns, new arrangements, new expressions of cosmic creativity. You are the universe experiencing itself, temporarily, beautifully, uniquely. Pause here and let this truth settle into your bones, into your breath, into the quiet spaces between your thoughts. Every atom in your body has been on a 13.8 billion year journey to become part of you in this moment. Every quantum fluctuation in your cells is part of the same uncertainty principle that governs the behavior of particles across the cosmos. Every change you experience is part of the same creative force that shapes galaxies and births stars. You are not separate from the universe, you are the universe, temporarily organized into the pattern of self-awareness that experiences itself as your life. Your consciousness is the cosmos becoming conscious. Your capacity for love is the universe learning to love itself. Your ability to wonder and create and grow is existence itself exploring its own possibilities. This perspective doesn't diminish the importance of your individual experience, it reveals its cosmic significance. Your personal journey of becoming is part of the universe's own journey of becoming. Your growth and change matter not despite their temporary nature, but because of it. You are the universe's brief, precious experiment in consciousness, creativity, and connection. Rest in this knowledge as you prepare for sleep, as you prepare for tomorrow's continuing transformation, as you prepare for the ongoing adventure of being a conscious part of the cosmic story. You are ancient and brand new, tiny and infinite, temporary and eternal, a beautiful paradox of existence, forever changing, forever becoming, forever part of something much larger and more wonderful than you can fully comprehend. Sweet dreams, cosmic wanderer. Tomorrow, you will wake up as someone new, carrying forward the universe's billion-year dream of consciousness into another day of beautiful becoming. There's a river that flows through the heart of Buddhist philosophy, and its name is impermanence. Anicca, as it's called in ancient Pali, is the recognition that everything in existence is in constant flux, that nothing remains the same, nothing can be held onto forever, and that the very attempt to grasp permanence in an impermanent world is the root of much human suffering. But tonight, as we near the end of our journey through the landscape of your constantly changing self, let's explore this ancient wisdom not as a spiritual doctrine, but as a practical truth that modern science has confirmed in every detail we've discovered together, from your cellular renewal to your quantum uncertainty, from your reconstructed memories to your socially constructed identity. Everything we've learned points to the same profound reality. You are not meant to be fixed, finished, or permanent. And this, rather than being a cause for despair, might be the most liberating truth you can embrace. Most of us, most of the time, resist change. We cling to comfortable patterns, familiar identities, known ways of being in the world. We speak of finding ourselves as if there was some essential, unchanging core waiting to be discovered and then preserved forever. We resist the dissolution of old relationships, the evolution of our interests, the natural development of our personalities. We fight against the flowing river of our own becoming. This resistance creates what Buddhists call dukkha, often translated as suffering, but perhaps better understood as the friction that arises when we try to hold still in a world that never stops moving. It's like trying to stop a river with your bare hands. The water will find its way around you, and you'll only exhaust yourself in the attempt. But what if, instead of fighting the current, we learn to swim? What if, instead of grasping for permanence, we develop the art of graceful letting go? What if we discovered that accepting change doesn't mean becoming passive or directionless, but rather learning to dance with the fundamental rhythm of existence itself? The paradox at the heart of this ancient wisdom, confirmed by everything we now know about human psychology and neuroscience, is that accepting change is precisely what allows for genuine growth. When we stop fighting against our natural fluidity, we become free to consciously participate in our own transformation. When we release the illusion of fixed identity, we discover the creative power of conscious becoming. Consider how this plays out in your own life. Think of times when you've grown the most, learned the most, become most fully yourself. Chances are, these were periods when you allowed old versions of yourself to dissolve, when you let go of limiting beliefs, outgrown relationships, or familiar but constraining ways of being in the world. Maybe it was leaving home for college and discovering aspects of your personality that couldn't emerge in your family system. Maybe it was ending a relationship that no longer served either of you, creating space for new kinds of love to enter your life. Maybe it was changing careers, letting go of others' expectations about who you should be professionally, and following a calling that felt more authentic to your evolving self. In each case, growth required a kind of death, the death of who you had been, to make room for the birth of who you were becoming. The caterpillar must dissolve entirely in the chrysalis before it can emerge as a butterfly. There's no way to add butterflyness to caterpillarness. Transformation requires the courageous willingness to let the old form completely go. This is why finding yourself might be less important than creating yourself. The language of finding implies that there's some essential, unchanging self waiting to be discovered, like a treasure buried in the sand. But everything we've explored together suggests that self is not a thing to be found, but a process to be lived, not a destination to reach, but a journey to embrace. You are not discovering who you are actively creating who you are, moment by moment, choice by choice, relationship by relationship. And this creation requires the ongoing willingness to let go of previous versions, previous limitations, previous certainties about what's possible for you. Mindfulness, the practice of present moment awareness without judgment, offers one of the most practical tools for learning this art of letting go. When you observe your thoughts, emotions, and sensations with gentle attention, you begin to notice their temporary nature. You see how feelings arise and pass away, how thoughts come and go like clouds across the sky, how even intense experiences have a beginning, middle, and end. This direct observation of impermanence in your moment-to-moment experience helps you develop what we might call change resilience, the capacity to remain centered and responsive even when everything around you is shifting. You learn to surf the waves of transformation rather than being tumbled by them. But mindfulness isn't about detaching from life or becoming indifferent to outcomes. It's about engaging fully while holding lightly, investing deeply in relationships, projects, and experiences while remaining open to how they might evolve or end. It's about loving with your whole heart while accepting that everything you love will change, including yourself. This might sound abstract, but it has profound practical implications for how you navigate the challenges and opportunities of your daily life. When you're struggling with a difficult emotion, mindfulness reminds you that feelings are weather patterns, not permanent climate. When you're excited about a new opportunity, mindfulness helps you appreciate it fully while staying open to how it might unfold differently than you expect. When you're attached to a particular outcome, getting a specific job, maintaining a certain relationship, achieving a particular goal, mindfulness helps you hold your intentions with what Buddhists call light hands. You can work toward what you want while remaining flexible about how it might manifest, or whether it might lead to something even better than you originally imagined. The beauty of embracing impermanence isn't that it makes you passive or fatalistic, quite the opposite. When you stop wasting energy fighting against the fundamental nature of reality, you free up tremendous resources for conscious participation in your own becoming. When you stop trying to control outcomes you can't control, you become much more effective at influencing the things you actually can influence. You can't control whether your relationships will last forever, but you can choose to love fully and authentically in each moment. You can't control whether your career will follow a straight path, but you can remain open to opportunities and responsive to your evolving interests and values. You can't control whether your body will remain young and healthy, but you can make choices that support your well-being and adapt gracefully to the changes that come with aging. This perspective transforms aging itself from a process of loss into a process of refinement. Each passing year strips away some of the non-essential, the need to prove yourself, the anxiety about others' opinions, the attachment to superficial markers of success, revealing more clearly what truly matters to you. Like a sculptor chipping away marble to reveal the form hidden within, time helps you discover the essential shape of your authentic self. Many older adults report feeling more themselves than they ever have, despite, or perhaps because of the physical changes and limitations that come with age. They've learned to let go of who they thought they should be and embrace who they actually are. They've practiced the art of letting go for decades, and it has made them freer, not more constrained. The fear of death, which underlies so much of our resistance to change, begins to transform when we truly understand impermanence. Death is not the opposite of life, but the completion of life, not the failure of existence, but its natural fulfillment. Every moment, in small ways, things are dying and being born within you: cells, thoughts, feelings, possibilities. Learning to let go of small things, yesterday's mood, this morning's plans, the person you were last year, prepares you for the ultimate letting go that will someday be required. But more immediately, it frees you to be fully alive in each present moment, unburdened by the futile attempt to make permanent what is inherently temporary. There's something profoundly liberating about recognizing that you don't have to hold everything together, that you don't have to maintain some consistent, unchanging version of yourself across time. You can allow yourself to be different in different seasons of your life, to grow in unexpected directions, to surprise yourself with new interests, new capacities, new ways of understanding the world. You can forgive yourself for outgrowing old dreams, old relationships, old versions of who you thought you were supposed to be. You can celebrate the fact that you're not the same person you were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even last year. Change isn't a sign that you're unstable or inconsistent, it's a sign that you're alive. The art of letting go doesn't mean becoming indifferent or uninvested. It means learning to hold your attachments lightly, to love fully while accepting that everything changes, to commit deeply while remaining flexible about outcomes. It means trading the impossible dream of permanence for the achievable reality of presence, being fully here, fully engaged, fully alive in each passing moment. As you practice this art of letting go, you might notice that life becomes both more poignant and more joyful. Knowing that nothing lasts forever makes each experience more precious, not less. Understanding that relationships will change makes you more grateful for the love you're experiencing now. Recognizing that your current challenges are temporary makes them more bearable, while knowing that your current joys are fleeting makes them more sweet. This is the paradox of impermanence. Fully accepting the temporary nature of everything allows you to engage more completely with life, not less. When you stop trying to make permanent what cannot be permanent, you become free to appreciate what is actually here, actually available, actually happening in this unrepeatable moment. And in this appreciation, in this presence, in this willingness to let go and let come, you discover that you are not diminished by change but revealed by it. Each transformation strips away another layer of what you thought you needed to be, exposing more clearly the luminous, creative, loving essence that was always there, waiting to be expressed in new ways, through new experiences, in the endless, beautiful adventure of becoming. Right now, as you listen to these words, you are standing at one of the most exciting frontiers in the universe, the edge of who you are becoming. Tomorrow morning, you will wake up as someone slightly different from who you are today. Not dramatically different, perhaps, but measurably, genuinely, beautifully changed. And the person you'll be a year from now, 5 years from now, a decade from now, that person is still being written, still being created, still being born from the choices you're making in this very moment. This is both thrilling and sobering. The future you is not predetermined. Your genetics provide the raw material, your past provides the starting point, your current circumstances provide the context, but who you become is still an open question, a story still being authored, an adventure still unfolding. You are not just discovering your future self, you are actively creating them. Every choice you make, no matter how small, is a vote for the kind of person you want to become. When you choose to respond to frustration with patience instead of anger, you're strengthening neural pathways that make patience more natural in the future. When you choose to practice a skill even when you don't feel like it, you're building not just competence, but discipline, persistence, the identity of someone who follows through on commitments to themselves. When you choose vulnerability over self-protection in relationships, you're becoming the kind of person who creates deeper connections. When you choose curiosity over certainty when encountering new ideas, you're becoming more flexible, more open, more capable of growth. When you choose compassion over judgment toward yourself and others, you're rewiring your brain in ways that will make compassion more automatic, more natural, more fundamentally part of who you are. This is the power and responsibility of conscious self-creation. Every moment offers you the opportunity to cast a vote for your future self. Not through grand gestures or dramatic transformations, but through the accumulation of small choices, repeated patterns, daily practices that gradually sculpt you into who you're becoming. Neuroscience has revealed the mechanism through which this works. Every experience, every choice, every repeated behavior literally changes the structure of your brain. The pathways you use most frequently become stronger, faster, more automatic. The patterns you practice become your default responses. The person you choose to be today is the person you're training yourself to become tomorrow. This means that personal transformation is not a mystery or accident, it's a skill that can be learned and practiced. You can become more intentional about the daily choices that are shaping your future self. You can develop what psychologists call implementation intentions, specific plans for how you'll respond to predictable situations in ways that align with who you want to become. If you want to become more patient, you can prepare specific responses for situations that typically trigger impatience. If you want to become more creative, you can build daily practices that exercise your creative capacities. If you want to become more connected to others, you can create habits that prioritize relationship and community. The beautiful thing about this process is that you don't have to wait until you've arrived at some ideal version of yourself to begin living as the person you want to become. You can start practicing the behaviors, attitudes, and choices of your future self right now. In fact, this is the only way to become that person, by beginning to embody their qualities before you feel ready, before it feels natural, before you're convinced you can sustain it. This is why "fake it till you make it" contains genuine wisdom, though perhaps it's better expressed as "practice it until you become it." When you act with confidence, even when you don't feel confident, you're not being dishonest, you're practicing confidence, strengthening the neural pathways that will make confidence more natural in the future. When you choose kindness even when you don't feel particularly kind, you're not being inauthentic, you're training yourself to become the kind of person for whom kindness is a natural response. Your future self is also shaped by the stories you tell about your potential and possibilities. If you see yourself as someone who's bad at math, or not creative, or terrible with relationships, these narratives become self-fulfilling prophecies. They influence what you attempt, how much effort you invest, how you interpret setbacks, and ultimately what you achieve. But if you understand that these stories are not fixed truths but current limitations that can be changed through practice and growth, everything shifts. Instead of saying, "I'm not a creative person," you might say, "I'm developing my creativity." Instead of, "I'm bad at public speaking," you could say, "I'm learning to communicate more effectively." This isn't just positive thinking. It's recognizing the neuroplastic reality that your brain can change, your skills can develop, your personality can evolve. The environment you create and choose to spend time in also plays a crucial role in shaping your future self. The books you read, the podcasts you listen to, the conversations you engage in, the places you go, the people you spend time with, all of these are actively influencing who you're becoming. Your future self is not just shaped by your conscious choices, but by the total ecology of influences you expose yourself to. This means you can be strategic about your environmental influences. If you want to become more intellectually curious, you can surround yourself with intellectually stimulating content and curious people. If you want to become more physically active, you can create environments that make movement natural and enjoyable. If you want to become more creative, you can expose yourself to diverse forms of art and beauty and creative expression. Your relationships are perhaps the most powerful environmental influence on your future self. The people you spend time with don't just reflect who you are, they actively shape who you're becoming. Their expectations, encouragement, challenges, and modeling of different ways of being in the world all influence your development. This is why choosing relationships that support your growth is not selfish, but essential. But here's something beautiful to consider. Just as you're being shaped by others, you're also shaping them. Your growth, your changes, your evolution affects everyone in your life. When you become more patient, the people around you experience less stress. When you become more creative, you inspire creativity in others. When you become more loving, you create conditions for others to be more loving too. This means that your personal transformation is not just about you, it's a gift to everyone whose life touches yours. Your future self will not only experience the benefits of your growth, but will also offer those benefits to the world. Every positive change you make ripples outward, contributing to the collective elevation of human consciousness and capability. You can't fully predict who you'll become, and that's the beauty of it. Though your choices shape your path, the details of your growth, strengths, and direction remain wonderfully unknown. You're not just building your future self, you're discovering them in real time. This uncertainty is not a flaw, but a gift. It means that no matter how stuck you feel, change is still possible. Your best days and boldest breakthroughs may still lie ahead. Each day is a new chance not to erase the past, but to choose who you want to be today. You're not bound to past patterns or past failures. You are always in motion, always becoming. Every habit, story, and intention you hold carries the seeds of the person you're growing into. The future you isn't far away, they're already taking shape in your present actions. They'll look back on this moment as the turning point, the day you chose growth over perfection, presence over fear. Who you become is not a question to be answered for you, but through you. Becoming is a daily act of courage and love. Rest well. Tomorrow, your future self begins again. So, why will you never be the same person twice? Because that's the most beautiful truth about being human, that change isn't something that happens to you occasionally, but something that is you constantly. You are not a static entity moving through time, but time itself flowing through the temporary arrangement of matter and consciousness that experiences itself as your life. We've journeyed together through the many layers of your constant becoming. At the physical level, your cells are renewing themselves on schedules from days to years, your atoms cycling through the cosmic dance of matter that connects you to ancient stars and future possibilities. Your brain is rewiring itself with every experience, every thought, every moment of learning, creating new neural highways while allowing old ones to fade into memory. Your memories themselves are not fixed recordings, but living stories that change with each telling, each remembering, each new context that gives them fresh meaning. Your identity is not a treasure to be discovered, but a masterpiece to be created, painted anew each day with the brushstrokes of choice, relationship, and conscious intention. Right now, renewal is already happening within you. New brain cells are forming, your heart is pumping blood through freshly made vessels, and your skin is shedding yesterday to make way for today. Even your microbiome is shifting quietly, influencing your thoughts and moods in ways you may never fully understand. You are both artist and artwork, the storyteller and the story unfolding. You are not apart from life's flow. You are the flow, shaped by every experience that's ever touched you. This is the miracle of being human. A conscious awareness, constantly in motion, constantly becoming. You don't need to have it all figured out. If you feel different than you did last week, last year, or even this morning, that's not brokenness. That's transformation. If you've outgrown old dreams or found new ones, that's not inconsistency, that's growth. Be gentle with yourself. Every version of you has mattered. Each one has been worthy of love, including the one lying down to sleep tonight. You are not a fixed point in time. You are a living poem, rewriting itself breath by breath. And tomorrow, you'll wake as someone subtly new, carrying forward all your wisdom, yet open to what's next. May tonight's dreams refresh you. May tomorrow surprise you. And may you always remember, you are not stuck, you are still becoming. Sweet dreams, beautiful changing soul.